Disney World sits on 43 square miles of Florida swamp, not meadow or farmland. Actual swamp. Stagnant water in every direction. The exact kind of terrain where mosquitoes breed by the billions. There are 80 different species living within a few miles of the property. About 58,000 visitors walk through open-air pathways every single day in the middle of a Florida summer, and almost nobody gets bitten. You can stand in line for Splash Mountain for 90 minutes at dusk in July, sweating in 95% humidity, surrounded by water features that would have an entire suburban neighborhood reaching for the bug spray, and you will walk back to your hotel without a single welt. This has been the case for almost half a century. Since the gates opened in 1971, Disney World has not had one single mosquito-borne disease outbreak among guests. While the rest of Florida has had West Nile, dengue, eastern equine encephalitis, and Zika rolling through neighborhoods just down the road, the largest theme park in the world has been a quiet hole in the map, where mosquitoes simply do not show up. Most people assume the answer is industrial-strength pesticide, some kind of chemical fog sprayed across the park after closing time. Disney cannot do that. Not with 58,000 people a day, including small children eating from open-air food carts, infants in strollers, and people with respiratory conditions. Spraying the kind of insecticide you would use in a warehouse would create more problems than any mosquito ever could. So what are they actually doing? 5 layers, each one stranger than the last. One layer is a drainage system that has been running on gravity alone for over 50 years without a single electrical input. Another is a spray made from garlic, calibrated at a concentration our noses physically cannot detect. And the 5th involves live chickens hidden in coops around the property, whose blood gets drawn and tested every week for diseases we would never know were circulating. But the whole system goes back to a man who never set foot inside the gates of the Magic Kingdom. He died 3 years before it opened. The 5-layer defense network Disney built to protect 58,000 daily visitors was designed by an Army general who learned the playbook from a hospital disaster that killed 22,000 workers in Panama in the 1880s. His name was Joe Potter. He never collected a dime in royalties. He never had a single Disney attraction named after him in any meaningful way. And yet every guest who has walked through Cinderella's castle bite-free since 1971 has been living inside the system Joe Potter built. Today we are unpacking exactly how that system works, why it has held for 50 years, and how Americans can install a working version of it in their own backyards for under $50. Welcome back to Forgotten Home Science, where we dig up the engineering that textbooks stopped teaching. I have spent the last few months going through the operational records of what is now called the Central Florida Tourism Oversight District, which most people still know by its old name, the Reedy Creek Improvement District. That is the local government that runs Disney's infrastructure. I also went through the 1882 to 1906 medical journals from the Panama Canal Zone, plus published interviews from former entomology staff at the park. None of what I am about to show you is theory. Every layer is documented in continuous operation right now. To understand layer 1, you have to go back to a hospital in Panama City in 1882. The French had just started building the Panama Canal. They built a state-of-the-art hospital on a hill above the city to treat workers who were dying on the project at terrifying rates. The wards were clean. Tropical plants lined the grounds for the patients to look at. And here is the part that broke them. To keep ants from crawling up onto sick patients in the night, hospital staff placed each bed leg into a small cup of fresh water. To protect the decorative garden plants, every pot was set into a ceramic ring filled with water. Cups of standing water under every bed. Rings of standing water around every plant. In the rooms where workers were dying of mosquito-borne disease, the French had accidentally built a mosquito breeding farm inside the hospital that was supposed to save them. At one point, the patient death rate hit 75%. They were culturing the disease they were trying to cure. Nobody understood why, because nobody knew yet that mosquitoes were the carriers. Over 22,000 workers died building that canal under French control. The project collapsed. France went bankrupt trying to finish it. When America took over the canal project in 1904, they sent in a military doctor named William Gorgas. Gorgas had already eradicated yellow fever from Cuba a few years earlier, and he understood something the French had not. He ordered every puddle, pond, and ditch in the canal zone drained. His teams poured oil and kerosene over standing water to suffocate the larvae. They fumigated homes and screened windows. He deployed 4,000 workers whose entire job was hunting and killing adult mosquitoes. Some of them were paid 1 cent per mosquito brought in by hand. By 1906, yellow fever was gone from the canal zone entirely. Malaria dropped 90%. The Panama Canal got built. And the lesson was brutally simple. You do not try to kill mosquitoes. You destroy the conditions they need to exist in the first place. Decades later, a man named Joe Potter served as governor of that same Panama Canal zone. Potter was an MIT graduate who had read every word Gorgas ever wrote about mosquito control. He had walked the same canals. He understood the playbook from the inside. In 1964, Potter met Walt Disney at the New York World's Fair. Walt was already shopping for someone to build his next park. When Potter heard the plan was to drop the world's largest outdoor theme park onto Florida swampland, he already knew exactly what had to happen first. Walt hired him on the spot and gave him the title of Vice President of Florida Planning. Before a single building went up, before a single ride was designed, before the entrance gate was even sketched, Potter started digging. This is layer 1 of 5. Potter's crews dug 47 miles of drainage canals across the entire property, 22 miles of levees, 24 water control gates. The system was engineered to move water constantly so the wet swamp got converted into solid, buildable ground. Here is the part that makes engineers stop and stare. The whole network runs on gravity. The floodgates float open when water rises to a certain level and close when it drops. There is no electricity involved, no pumps, no human monitoring. The system activated before the park opened in 1971 and has been running continuously ever since. More than 50 years without interruption. Those canals are still called Joe's Ditches by the operations crew. The ferry across the Seven Seas Lagoon is named the General Joe Potter. Most guests assume it is a fictional Disney character. It is not. Joe Potter was a real Army general who learned mosquito warfare in the same Panama jungle where Gorgas wrote the playbook in blood. A drainage network of 47 miles designed by a man who watched standing water kill thousands of people, still running on gravity 55 years later without a single electrical input or human override. That is layer 1. But drainage only eliminates breeding sites in the ground. A mosquito does not need a swamp, it only needs any water that sits still for 48 hours. A teaspoon of rain caught in a curled leaf, a puddle on a rooftop gutter, a shallow dip in a windowsill after a thunderstorm. Layer 1 cannot touch any of that. Layer 2 is the part you have walked past your entire life without noticing. Next time you are at Magic Kingdom, look up. The rooftops have steep angles, the spires come to sharp points, the eaves curve outward, the facades bow out at the base. Stand in a Florida afternoon thunderstorm and watch the rain head off every surface instantly, channeling into drains you never notice. Every surface in the park is shaped so water cannot sit. There are no flat ledges, no recessed windowsills, no horizontal lips where even a quarter inch of water could pool for a few hours. Cinderella Castle was designed to look like a fairy tale. It was also engineered to be lethal to mosquitoes. The architecture goes all the way to the ground. Disney World contains over 13 million individual plants. Every species was selected because its leaves shed water rather than cup it. When it rains, the water hits the leaves, rolls off and flows into the drainage channels that feed Joe's canal network. Even the grass on the lawns drains faster than standard turf, which prevents puddles from forming after the daily afternoon thunderstorms Florida is famous for. 13 million plants, hundreds of buildings, 50 years of landscaping, all of it engineered for one purpose the guests never think about. That is layer 2 of 5. But there is water Disney cannot drain. The Seven Seas Lagoon covers 200 acres. Cinderella Castle's moat holds water year-round. The park has dozens of lakes, ponds, and rivers. So how do you stop mosquitoes from breeding in them? Layer 3. Every body of water inside Disney World moves. Fountains churn the surface. Rides push thousands of gallons through channels every hour. Underground tubes link separate waterways. So even lakes that look still on the surface are cycling water through a filtration loop underneath. A female mosquito needs 48 hours of undisturbed water to lay viable eggs. Disney's water never sits still that long, not anywhere on the property. For any larvae that somehow do hatch, Disney stocked every waterway with a specific kind of fish called gambusia. The common name is mosquito fish. They are about 2 inches long with upturned mouths that evolved specifically for surface feeding, which is exactly where mosquito larvae cluster. A single female gambusia eats up to 500 larvae per day, 500 per fish per day. They've been patrolling every pond, lake, and canal on Disney property for over 50 years. The park essentially built a private army of fish whose entire job description is killing mosquitoes before they hatch. That is layer 3 of 5. So far, every layer has been about prevention. Drain the water, shed the water, move the water, eat the larvae. But none of these stop an adult mosquito that is already hatched in the wetlands outside the property line and flies in over the fence. Drainage cannot intercept it. Architecture cannot block it. Fish cannot eat it. Something else has to stop it at the perimeter before it reaches a guest. Layer 4 is the dollar method. Walt Disney was firm about one rule: no chemical pesticides anywhere near guests. He did not want families walking through insecticide mist or eating popcorn coated in chemical residue. So Potter's team had to find something that repelled mosquitoes and was completely invisible to the people walking through it. They landed on garlic, specifically liquid garlic extract. The active compound is called allicin. It is a sulfur-based molecule that gets released when garlic cells are crushed. To a mosquito, allicin is sensory chaos. It overwhelms their olfactory receptors and effectively blinds them to the carbon dioxide and body heat signals they use to find a human target. A mosquito with allicin in the air cannot find you, even if you are standing 3 feet in front of it. Disney sprays this extract across the park on a regular schedule. And here is the part that is hard to believe until you look up the concentration tables. The dilution is calibrated just below the threshold of human detection. You will never smell it. Your nose literally cannot pick it up at that concentration. But a mosquito's sensory system, which is thousands of times more sensitive to airborne chemicals than ours, is completely jammed. At the same time invisible garlic is being sprayed across your path, Disney is pumping pleasant fragrances through patented scent emitters they call smellitizers. Disney holds the actual patent on this technology. Walk past the Main Street Bakery and you smell vanilla and warm cookies. Stroll past Pirates of the Caribbean and you smell salt water and damp wood. Head down Main Street USA at any hour of the day and you smell cinnamon churros. These are engineered scent injections. They enhance the guest experience. They also mask any trace of garlic that might float into human awareness. You are walking through an invisible mosquito barrier and a curated sensory experience simultaneously. And you have zero idea either one is happening. A garlic defense calibrated below human detection, masked by patented scent machines pumping the smell of churros. A bottle of the concentrate costs about $1. That is layer 4 of 5. 4 layers deep, and every single one of them is passive. Drainage, architecture, fish, garlic. None of them gather any intelligence about what is actually flying in the air. Nobody on the entomology team knows where mosquito populations are increasing this week, which species arrived from the marshes overnight, or whether any of them are carrying viruses that could put a child in the hospital. For a property that hosts 58,000 people every day, that blind spot is not acceptable. This is layer 5, and this is the layer the title actually promised you. Disney operates a mosquito surveillance program through the Reedy Creek Improvement District. Reedy Creek functions essentially as Disney's own local government. They have their own building codes, their own fire department, their own utility services, and they run a mosquito intelligence operation that, on paper, rivals what most state health departments do. Carbon dioxide traps sit at strategic locations across the full 43 square miles of the property. Mosquitoes are drawn to carbon dioxide because it mimics the breath of a living mammal. The traps capture them alive. Disney's entomology team collects the traps, freezes the specimens, and analyzes them species by species, measuring population density and determining whether females were about to reproduce. That data drives the next week's spray schedule and where the team focuses garlic application. The traps are only half the surveillance, and this is the part that makes people do a double take when they hear it. Hidden in coops around the edges of the property, there are flocks of sentinel chickens, live birds, exposed to every mosquito species in the area. Mosquitoes carrying West Nile virus, Eastern equine encephalitis, or St. Louis encephalitis bite the chickens. The chickens never get sick because they are not susceptible to these viruses the way humans are. But the antibodies show up in their blood. Disney's veterinary team draws blood from the sentinel chickens every single week and tests it. If West Nile shows up in a chicken in a specific zone, the team knows exactly which sector of the park has infected mosquitoes circulating, and they deploy countermeasures before a single guest is at risk. The chickens cannot tell anyone they have been bitten, but their blood tells the scientist everything. Other Florida counties run small versions of the same sentinel chicken program. Disney runs it at a scale that, on paper, rivals what a state department of health operates. Then there is the biological Air Force. Bat boxes are scattered across the property. A single brown bat eats more than 1,000 insects per hour, and Disney has dozens of bat colonies on the property quietly clearing the night sky of anything that hatches after dark. Purple martin nesting boxes are disguised as decorative architectural elements. The martins eat thousands of insects a day per bird and do not bother the guests because they hunt at altitudes the guests never notice. In the marshier areas of the property, Disney releases parasitic wasps that feed exclusively on mosquito larvae and die off naturally before they ever come into contact with a human. An intelligence network spanning 43 square miles, which is roughly twice the size of Manhattan, running in real time. Frozen specimens analyzed by species. Sentinel chickens whose blood reveals invisible outbreaks, a private air force of bats, wasps, and dragonflies enforcing the perimeter at night. None of it required a single drop of chemical pesticide. That is layer 5 of 5. 5 layers. Gravity-fed canals from a man who learned mosquito warfare watching 22,000 workers die in Panama. Architecture engineered down to the leaf. Mosquito fish patrolling every body of water. Invisible garlic masked by patented churro machines, a surveillance network of sentinel chickens, and a biological air force. Florida mosquitoes carry West Nile, dengue, and eastern equine encephalitis, which has a fatality rate around 30%. The 5 layers kept all of it away from guests for almost half a century, until 2016. That summer, the Zika virus reached Florida. Zika causes severe birth defects in unborn children. The 5 layers were built to stop mosquitoes from reaching guests. They were not built to stop what the mosquitoes were carrying. Every defense has a gap. The gap can be invisible until something arrives to expose it. Disney deployed emergency measures. Insect repellent stations appeared in every land of every park. Hotel rooms were stocked with aerosol cans of Cutter backwoods. Signs went up across the resort. The My Disney Experience app started pushing notifications about mosquito prevention. At night, Disney began chemically fogging common areas with a product called Scourge, manufactured by Bayer. They even filled in the stagnant water at the abandoned River Country water park, a closed attraction that nobody had thought to drain in years. For the first time since Joe Potter dug his ditches in the late 1960s, Disney broke Walt's rule. The garlic and the chickens and the fish were not enough to stop a virus that did not exist when the system was designed. 5 layers held the perimeter for 45 years against everything they were built for. They could not hold against the one threat they were not built for. That is the lesson buried inside this story. Every system has a blind spot it cannot see until something arrives to exploit it. For routine mosquito control, which is what most homeowners actually need, the 5 layers absolutely hold. Almost all of them can be replicated in your own yard for under $50. Step 1. Eliminate every source of standing water within 50 feet of the house. Bird baths, clogged gutters, plant saucers, old tires sitting behind the shed, even bottle caps. The 48-hour rule from Disney applies in your yard too. Any water sitting still for 2 days is a mosquito hatchery. Step 2. If you have a pond, a water feature, or any decorative water on your property, drop Gambusia into it. Most county mosquito control districts across the United States hand them out for free if you call and ask. 5 mosquito fish in a small ornamental pond, clear it of larvae permanently. Step 3. Switch your porch lights to warm spectrum LED bulbs, 2700 Kelvin or lower. About $2 to $3 per bulb. Mosquitoes navigate toward ultraviolet light, and warm LED bulbs produce almost none. Your porch effectively goes dark on a mosquito's sensory radar. Step 4. Buy a bottle of garlic barrier concentrate online for about $1 an ounce. Mix it with water and spray the perimeter of your yard. Lasts about 2 weeks. The dilution rate that works for backyard application is on the bottle, but the rule of thumb is 1 ounce of concentrate to 1 gallon of water for a quarter-acre lot. Coat the bushes, the fence line, and any dense vegetation where mosquitoes rest during the day. You will not smell it. They will be unable to find you. Step 5. Install a bat house at least 15 feet up on a tree or the side of your house. A single small colony of brown bats clears the mosquito population in a typical suburban backyard faster than any chemical fogger sold at the hardware store. Bat houses run between $30 and $60, and once a colony moves in, you are done. They handle the rest for the next decade. Total cost, under $50. The same 5-layer system protecting 58,000 people a day, scaled down to a single American backyard. Walt Disney did not invent any of this. He hired a man who learned it from one of the darkest chapters in American engineering history. 22,000 workers died in Panama because the hospital that was trying to save them accidentally bred the mosquitoes that killed them. William Gorgas figured out the playbook in blood. Joe Potter carried the playbook to Florida. Potter died in 1988, and every guest who has walked into the Magic Kingdom without a single bite since the gates opened in 1971 has been living inside the system he quietly built. Most of this content is buried for the same reason most useful knowledge gets buried. Somebody makes money keeping you dependent. The pest control industry in the United States pulled in over $16 billion in residential revenue last year. None of that money would exist if every household ran the same 5-layer system Disney built. Every share of this video puts one more household closer to the $1.50 version of the same defense. Send this to the person in your life who is currently paying a quarterly mosquito service and still getting bitten. They will thank you. And if you want the next one to find you when it drops, the subscribe button does that quietly in the background. Now, the next video I am working on is about a $2 powder that hotels quietly hide inside every single mattress in their room turnovers. The compound was developed in the 1970s, and a manufacturer proved in a lab study that it kills every bed bug it touches within minutes and stays lethal for 10 years undisturbed. 5-star hotels have been using it since the early 2000s. Almost nobody outside the pest control industry knows it exists by name. I will see you in that one.